Hey guys, my name is Margarita Zabari and I'm an IFBB Fitness Pro. But aside from that, I'm just a regular girl who decided to go for her dream. If you guys have been following me for a while, you know that I've had my fair share of ups and downs, and I've gotten to a point where I no longer want to hide that aspect of myself, but I just want to come forth and hopefully connect with many of you guys who share a similar story. What many of you probably don't know about me is alongside my competitive career, I have been also on a spiritual journey, and I have been certified and gone through my levels of Reiki, which has really been something crazy alongside my competition prep. To put your body through such extreme states, your mind follows, and your mind goes through extreme states. And when I'm opened up to this kind of spiritual learning about myself, I've really gotten the chance to be able to go deep with everything. Reiki for me has just opened me up to another side of who I am. And with that, I think, I can honestly say that every single competition prep that I've been through has pretty much been like a life experience, a spiritual experience. And I've learned a lot about myself along the way. I wanted to make this video because I found that there's just such a gray area on this topic, and it took me a long time to figure it out. But I have, and that's why I feel like I need to share it. I need to share what I found. And this is on the subject of being hard on yourself. And it's often misunderstood. And I feel that it's very important to kind of decipher and work through the greater meanings of this, because if you learn how to master this aspect, I firmly believe that you could take this lesson and apply it to everything in your life. So what I want to talk about is kind of the whole idea of being hard on yourself, and how you can do that in a very healthy way and how you can do that in a very unhealthy way. And through my preps, I found myself doing it. By the end of it, like by my last prep in 2017, I was doing it in a very unhealthy way. And it got to a point where the self-talk going on in my mind was just a negative, cyclical pattern. Fear was my motivator, and it was my only motivator at one point. And from my experience, your body just doesn't change like that. No matter what you're doing, you don't have to be doing fitness, you don't have to be a competitor, but whatever your goals are and whatever you're working towards, I've learned that if you're a complete asshole to yourself, your body's not going to comply. I understand it's a good thing to use fear as, kind of fuel to your fire, but when it becomes something and the only thing that motivates you, I think that's a very unhealthy way to live and operate. Don't get me wrong, in a competition prep, you'll always feel like you're never enough because you're striving for greatness, and that could be great. But you also can't completely have only negative thoughts that replay over and over and over, because then you're going to break your body down. Then you're going to break your mind down, and then your entire being is really not going to work with you. And if you're completely destroying yourself in your mind and saying these horrible things to yourself, where are you going to go? And this is where it's kind of like a very thin line, because as a competitor, you can't be complacent and you can't think like, oh, I'm good enough. I'm not trying to say that at all. I'm just trying to say a little bit of support goes a long way. And while you're driven by the idea of always wanting to be more, which is great, you can't back it up with only fear and no positive, affirming, loving things to say to yourself. I've been stuck, especially in my last prep, where I was at a point where, like I said, I was not saying anything good to myself. And you know what? My body showed that. My body completely showed that. Was 2017 my best? Not at all. Not at all. When I won my pro card, that was my best to this point. But in 2017, when I did my first pro show, I was not at my best. And the reason why is because my body and my mind were completely not working in unison anymore. So how did I really get through this if I was just a complete asshole to myself every day? To be honest with you, I just sat down and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Like I mentally am not in a good place. I'm mentally not healthy right now, and I can't go further. So I really sat down and wrote on a piece of paper, what is going on, Margarita? And so I started from the beginning, and I was not a good person when it came to making mistakes. I never let myself live a mistake down. And through that, the negative thoughts and self-talk would kick in. So the number one thing I want to say right now, let's talk about mistakes. You're going to make them. They are inevitable. But if you sit there breaking yourself down over it, you're not learning the lesson. Through the mistakes that you do, there's always something from that to be taken and applied, and that adds to your growth. That adds to your growth away or above the challenge you might be facing. If you don't allow yourself to make mistakes, you're never going to grow. And that kind of perfectionist quality has to be really, really looked over, and you have to be attentive of your reaction to yourself when this inevitable step of life comes up. So number one, mistakes. Don't be afraid to make them. You're going to make them. That's life. You cannot avoid them. So don't hold it against yourself. Take the lesson, extract the lesson that was meant to be learned, and keep that tool as a part of your arsenal to be able to move forward. Number two, let's talk about self-love. Because again, this is an area where everyone thinks like, oh, self-love just means being easy on yourself, and it's not. Self-love is not being easy on yourself. Self-love is accepting yourself. Self-love is accepting your flaws and your mistakes that you've made. Self-love is holding yourself to a specific standard, and with that standard comes discipline. And with that discipline is the fact of you need to be hard on yourself in a respect to keep yourself on that goal. And that's where the gray area that I've really realized comes into play is people think like, oh, I'm not going to be hard on myself. I'm going to love myself. I'm going to be filled with self-love. But then they veer from their discipline, and they don't realize that their discipline is actually just a standard. You should have a high standard of yourself, especially when you're working towards a goal. You have one life to complete your dream. You have one life to make everything happen. Are you gonna get there by patting yourself on the back, being like, it's okay, I'll just do it tomorrow? No, you're not. And so that's when being hard on yourself is a very healthy thing. That's when being hard on yourself is a very necessary thing. Like, you can't reach any goal without that. You can't reach a goal without having that self-standard, which really is just self-respect. Are you going to allow yourself to eat cake every day? No. And again, we're using fitness as the example, but this could be anything. Are you going to allow yourself to slack or just take the easy route? No, you're not, because you're never going to get anywhere. And that's the problem that I really see, and that's the problem that I've even experienced with myself, and that I could look back on and really decipher. Are you being hard on yourself in a good way, or is it a bad way? Again, if it's negative talk to yourself all the time, you're destroying your being. If you're just, hands up in the air, like you could do whatever you want, life isn't about doing whatever you want in that sense. You can't have a goal and just decide when you are going to work towards it and when you're not going to work towards it. If you have a goal and a purpose that is greater than yourself, you work towards that every single day, because that is your standard and respect for your life's path. And that brings me into number 3, being hard on yourself and recognizing whether or not you're being hard on yourself in a healthy way or an unhealthy way. Sit down with yourself. If you're ever confused about where you are and what you're doing, sit down with yourself in silence and really ask yourself that question, and the answer will come. And that's what I did. I sat with myself and I really said, okay, there's just this whole idea of being hard on yourself is just so confusing to me. And I know all I knew at the time was just do more, be harder, do this, like be extreme. And that's when I realized that I was just being a complete asshole to myself. And that's what was holding me back. And so I realized and learned what it meant to me to be healthy, to be hard on myself in a healthy way and an unhealthy way. So that's number 3, learn how to decipher how you're being with yourself. Number 4 is repeating patterns. So for myself, I went through 3 to 4 years of repeating patterns. And it would happen so often that, again, I really just sat down with myself and I'm like, okay, this is happening for a reason. What am I not getting? And the reason I was repeating patterns is because I wasn't getting myself out of that negative frame. I wasn't getting myself out of that negative cycle, and I was just stuck. Why? Because I didn't know the difference between being hard on myself in those 2 ways. So if you're stuck in a negative pattern, what I would say is really sit with yourself and ask yourself what's going on. If you're continuing to experience the same things over and over again, that's not a coincidence. That is a sign, and that needs your attention because there is something in there for you to extract the lesson and grow from. If you're not extracting the lesson and you're stuck on that level, you need to figure out the deeper meanings of what is going on. And again, this is where I feel that motivation doesn't exist for this. To be honest, using myself as an example again, I had a really bad relationship with food, and I don't have that anymore. Why? Because I spent the last years trying to figure that out, trying to figure out why I was like that, and trying to get rid of that underlying cause that made me keep going back to what I knew was bad for me. You can't stay motivated to just keep being like, oh, nope, don't do that, nope, don't do that. Figure out why you keep going back to it. For myself, I'll use food as an example. I didn't want to just be like, oh, no, Margarita, don't have the urge to go eat whatever the fuck you want. Like, no, like, figure out why you feel like that. You're not going to get anywhere until you get through those underlying root causes. And until I did that for myself, that's when I was really able to grow from it and move on. Of course, no one wants to be the screw up to continue to do these things that are not good for you. And oftentimes we just get down on ourselves, subconsciously think that you're not good enough to pass whatever's holding you down, and so you just accept it. Don't accept it. Don't accept it. Get to the bottom of it, because whatever's placed on your path is for a big reason. And that reason is, again, intertwined with your entire being and your growth. And once you extract that lesson, you will be on your way to another level of your higher being and your higher path. So again, number 4, notice those repeating patterns and notice what's going on. There's a way to get out of this, and it has to do with self-acceptance. You have to accept yourself and accept what you're going through at any given time. If you're not accepting, then that means you're resisting. And if you're resisting, you're just running away from your growth. It's almost a state of denial because you're not wanting to face what is calling you to be faced. Things are very difficult. And I'm not going to say that it's going to be a walk in the park or it's going to be like over in 24 hours. It took me 3 to 4 years to get past my own struggles that I continued to face, and they would just pop back up again. And I would always think that, okay, it's done. I learned my lesson. I'm good now. I would always think I was good now, but I wasn't good. Things take time, and you have to be patient with yourself. But most of all, you have to accept and love yourself through this. And most of all, you have to know that loving yourself means having that discipline with yourself to do better, to be better. At the end of the day, whatever your path is, whatever your dream is, whatever your calling is, you know that feeling deep inside. And if you don't, I urge you to go out there and find it. But you'll always know the right thing to do. And the right thing to do is never going to be the easy thing to do. It's going to be tough. It's going to be very tough. But it's worth it. And so if you could accept yourself along the way and show yourself that self-love, which is really just self-respect, you will be able to get out of any pattern that holds you down. So I've come up with a theory and kind of a little flow chart because I'm such a nerd and I always just draw everything out. But I want to share it with you guys because once I saw this on paper, I was like, all right, this isn't as hard as it seems. This could be a really easy thing as long as I just applied myself, as long as you just apply yourself. So I want to show you guys and really talk through it. Hey guys, okay, so this is my flowchart, and as you can see, all 4 steps really intertwine with each other. So you have making mistakes and self-love, which is acceptance, at the top, and then step number 3 is really where you could decipher which way and what fate is in your hands. If you do it in a healthy way, you're going to get results. You're going to be on board with your better self. If you do it in an unhealthy way, you're going to find yourself repeating negative patterns. And if you struggle with self-love, then you're going to find yourself right back at the beginning, unable to make mistakes and unable to grow from the situation. So screenshot this, save it, pause the video, and refer back to this anytime you need to see where exactly you are in your own journey. I sincerely believe that whatever you are going through on your journey is A, for a reason, and B, it's placed on your journey because you are meant to overcome it. But overcoming it is going to take a higher version of yourself. And you're meant to be the highest version of yourself. Is it going to be a one-time thing? No, you're going to experience this a lot. But every single time you experience a challenge and adversity, you are going to grow into the greatest version that you've always been meant. You've always meant to be. You have always been meant to be. The greatest version that you have always been meant to be. Just don't be afraid of it. Every challenge that you face is just a higher order. It really is. Don't be stuck in blaming external circumstances. Really, just whatever you're given, take it and sit with it and learn it and understand it because it's being presented to you for a reason. So I hope this makes a lot of sense to you, and I'm really happy to be able to share my journey. And I encourage all of you guys, don't be afraid of being vulnerable. We're given these life experiences, no matter how tough they are, to be able to share with people because these are our greatest gifts to the world. It's almost a disservice if you don't share what you've gone through because it's your special journey that no one else will have, but so many other people will connect with. So I encourage you to be proud of every single struggle that you've ever gone through because you are meant for the greatest things, and I sincerely believe everyone on this planet is here for a greater purpose. Just stay in tune with it, and I will talk to you guys later. Yeah, I'm at a point where I just don't want to hold back, and I just want to share every bit of who I am